Hello guys, and welcome back to the channel. Now guys, we have a lot to learn about propriety in Nigeria. We have a lot to learn about propriety in Nigeria, and we really need to get to grips with the concept that there's a time and place for everything. Now, there's nothing Nigerians love more than tradition. We love tradition, we take pride in our tradition, and we consider some of our traditions to be some of the best traditions that we will find anywhere in the world. And I'm in agreement with that as well, especially the Yoruba tradition where I come from, and everybody will say the same of their tradition. So we're quite passionate and take great pride in our tradition. But with this as well, there's a propriety as well, and there's a time and a place for this sort of traditions. So now, apparently, it seems as though the Ooni of Ife boarded the plane and started off, or his diviner started off, with what can only be described as a Babalawo chant. So guys, I bring you this. Nigerians plead blood of Jesus on plane as Ooni of Ife's diviner performed traditional rites on flight, and there's a video evidence of this, so please watch on. So again, the headline, Nigerians plead blood of Jesus on plane as Ooni of Ife's diviner performed traditional rite on flight. So now here's the body of the story. Nigerians on an Arik Air flight from Port Harcourt to Lagos were taken aback, and some began to plead the blood of Jesus after the Ooni of Ife boarded the plane with his diviner, who was performing some sort of traditional rite. Passengers were already seated when the Ooni of Ife, Oba Adeyeye Enitan Ogunwusi, and his aides walked in. His diviner was also present, dressed in an attire befitting of his position, and he held two instruments which he raised above his head and shook vigorously to make a sound. The diviner kept shaking the instrument until the Ooni sat down. He then put the instruments in a satchel hanging by his side and proceeded to his seat at the back of the plane. Artist manager Soso Soberekun, who was on the same flight, revealed some Nigerians were shaken by the incident, that they began to plead the blood of Jesus. So now this is what happened on a plane, on a commercial plane being boarded by the Ooni of Ife, who then proceeded then to take his tradition onto an I was going to say an international flight, but it's actually an internal flight from Port Harcourt to Lagos, or yes, it was from Port Harcourt to from Port Harcourt to Lagos. So he then proceeded to take his tradition on an internal flight from Port Harcourt to Lagos, making all this racket with his entourage, showing off and making all these chants, which really to the discomfort of his fellow passengers. Very inconsiderate behavior, of course, and behavior unbecoming of somebody that is meant to be a foremost lead figure within the Yoruba hegemony. This is completely unacceptable behavior. You cannot go on a plane and start to chant and wail. You cannot go on a plane and start to chant and wail. He would not do that in America, would he? Because he knows what the consequences would be. So now, what propels him then, what compels him to feel the need to do this, should then compel him to feel the need to do it in America. But he will not do it in America. He will not do it in the United Kingdom. So if he's not able to then do it in those places, why then is he then able to do it here? Because he knows he can get away with it. That's it. It has no other meaning outside of just a show-offing, man past man kind of behavior. If you feel the need to have this sort of behavior, then why don't you get yourself a private plane? Because you are not on a private jet, you're on a commercial flight, and the people that are on that flight, they are not all your subjects, especially if you are flying from Port Harcourt, which is in the eastern part of Nigeria, and you are from the western parts of Nigeria, and they just fairly tolerate your tradition, which they don't believe in anyway, and then you then have to add to that resentment that might well be within them towards that sort of behavior by coming on board the plane to start to do Babalawo chanting. So this is now the sort of shocking behavior that we've now come to expect within this Nigerian space, and this is not the first time, by the way, that this guy has behaved in a manner that is unbecoming. You would recall when Omoyele Sowore went to visit him during the electoral campaign, and this chap kept him waiting for ages and ages before he was able to attend to him. And because Omoyele Sowore then got miffed, he then had Sowore tear gassed. This is what he did. So this is the kind of fella that this chap is. So now you see a clip in a moment of this chanting that this guy took onto the plane. So I'll play that now actually here. So now this guy now has the history of this sort of behavior, which is now becoming a fairly consistent thing within him. And this is really something that is a cause of concern, because he's always making waves, and often some of these waves are not the right sort of waves. He married that girl, you remember, and there was a lot of hoopla around that as well. The girl is also a fairly weird person anyway, really. So two weirdos meet and they converge, and that's fair enough, that's their thing. But then he can't then be going around the world making all this noise and all this racket just because you are saying you represent the Yoruba race. I'm a Yoruba man too, and I am with the Ooni tradition, because the Ooni is the divinity of the Yoruba race, is the source of our being, and this is where we look to in terms of belief, a belief system. So this is the traditional belief system of the Yorubas, the deities, the divinities, the gods, etc. I mean, outside of the main religion. This was first the religion that we knew before other religions came and took its place. And a lot of people still look to this religion, if not for religion, at least for culture. So this guy actually holds a prominent space within the Yoruba hegemony. So now, and then we don't really want this sort of goings on and this sort of carrying on, really, that this guy seems to want to do. And you know, it's a funny one with this sort of Ooni guy. He's a fairly young guy, so that's fair enough. I think he's in his early 40s thereabouts, so he has that. But then that's not enough of a thing or enough of a reason to excuse this sort of conduct, because really at 40 he should know enough to know enough, and then as the Ooni as well, he should be satiated in knowledge and wisdom, because really that is what that seat commands. So really, and this sort of behavior for whatever reason is unacceptable. You cannot board a plane and start to chant and wail. We're also now looking at the multi-faith element of the passengers on that plane. So the other passengers on the plane were so jarred by this sort of behavior that they felt the need to plead the blood of Jesus. So if we are pleading the blood of Jesus, Christians usually plead the blood of Jesus usually as a cry out when they feel that they are in danger or they are threatened or in some way. So obviously the passengers then feel threatened or endangered by this sort of behavior to the point that they felt the need to cry the blood of Jesus, because they consider it to be some form of a spiritual attack of some form, and they don't even know. They are boarding a plane, by the way, and we all know what happens in planes sometimes in Nigeria, where they just drop from the skies, and then they're starting to wonder, is this guy going to get funny? Is this going to get funny, this journey, all of a sudden? I'm surprised rather that some of them did not even ask to come off the plane, because I would have asked to come off the plane if somebody came in on the plane and started to do Babalawo chanting. So now this sort of behavior is behavior that must not be accepted, and this now needs to be addressed with this Ooni fella, because this sort of carrying on is not the sort of representation that we want for the Yoruba race. Yes, we like all the hooplas and all the traditions and all the divinations and or whatnot. We like all the accoutrements of the position and the authority of the Ooni, but we don't want the Ooni boarding a plane and start to do Babalawo chanting to try and scare and intimidate his fellow passengers just because he wants to show that he has tradition. So now, what says you? Conversations in the comment section. The Ooni of Ife and his conduct is what we are discussing in this piece. So the Ooni of Ife and his conduct. So now, what says you? What is your take on my position on this matter, and what is your position on this matter as well? This is what I'm inviting you to come and discuss with me. So, but before you come have that conversation with me though, click on the red subscribe button so it turns gray. Click on the bell button, that's where you are notified every time I drop a new video. Then come have a chat with me about what the Ooni did in the comment section. So I'll leave you here, meet you in the comment section, but here I say peace.